X card.
Yep, son of a bitch. Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gooding. Fuck you, Scott. Tonight's show brought to you by our proud Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join them, feel free to visit patreon.com/SWGM podcast. Throw us a buck, get behind the program. If you subscribe at a specific level, you get backstage access the half hour before the show to all this chicanery. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Savage Worlds GM Podcast, at Savage Worlds GM Podcast on Twitter. If you have a show suggestion or topic, email it to savagedaddy@gmail.com. And we are also like, subscribe, and check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Savage Worlds GM Podcast, and on iTunes and other RSS subscription services where podcasts appear, Savage Worlds GM Podcast. Tonight's episode, we're continuing part 2, Mo Magic. We're going to talk about the additional powers, the new edges, and some of the changes in Slade. And here to discuss it, Chris, the Savage Mommy Fox.
Mo Magic, Mo Magic.
Dave, the Rules Maven Scott.
Swear to God, I'll pistol whip the next motherfucker that says shenanigans.
Dustin, the Savage Zealot Smith.
Homeless heroes squatting in a house next to you and doing podcasts.
And Scott W., the Savage Squatter.
Ooh, I was their food.
And one other thing, too, if you're watching the live stream going out on YouTube, feel free to participate in the chat. We do bring that into the show. So last week, we really talked about some of the new changes in arcane backgrounds, pretty much focused on arcane backgrounds. We had some slight discussion about power modifiers. But tonight, we want to dig a little bit deeper into some of the newer changes that have happened to powers in the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition.
Deeper.
God damn it, Chris.
So let's go deep. One of the things that is interesting is now it's no longer the new power edge. It's the new powers, plural edge.
Yeah.
So whenever you take a new power edge, you actually get 2 for the price of 1 edge.
Bonus.
Millennial Savage Worlds.
Amazing.
It's actually pretty handy.
Hey, come on now. Give the people what they want.
Yeah, it's pretty handy.
So you become. So what do you guys feel do you guys feel that has an impact on power levels in games where, you know, regular non-magic users are taking edges, but if I'm a arcane background or I have an arcane background, I'm taking 2 powers for an edge?
Well, that's a question. Do we really consider one power equal to 1 edge?
I kind of do. They're kind of structured for the mechanical benefit of an edge.
Yeah. But with most edges, I guess the tax you pay for casting a power, right, is a little bit different than, you know, most of the edges don't have a tax that your character has to pay.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at like half or more of the edges are a flat +2 every time you do X.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And instead, here's an edge that to use, I have to make a skill roll to activate and hope that then everything else goes off. I mean, you look at, we were talking about Resurrection before the show. That has like 2 layers of extra limitations on it that don't even matter about your arcane background. Just you have to have the body and you have to have the time. And then the body has to only be sold. So now you're in 3 layers of extra limitations. And then it's 30 power points. And then even if you've got past all of that and made your spellcasting roll, your arcane skill roll was a success, you then have to make a follow-up healing roll at a -8 to use that power. Tell me that that's worth even half an edge.
Well, that's an extreme example too, right? I mean,
actually.
Oh, Jesus.
And it starts.
So let's compare something that's a little bit more on an even keel for that conversation. Compare Bolt to like Marksman.
Sure.
Okay. So Marksman, every time my character pulls his bow, gun, whatever, I get a flat bonus as if I had done an extra maneuver in my round.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, I can't move, and it's got its own limitations, but it's a flat bonus, and I never run out of it. Even if I run out of ammo, technically speaking, I still get that bonus. I could still get the aim bonus to whatever I'm shooting, even if I've already run out of the ammo my character was carrying by picking up ammo off the battlefield or whatever. By comparison, Bolt is limited by the number of power points the character has.
Mm-hmm.
It is limited to a set rate of fire now. You can only get 1 bolt per casting. You can't do the big bolt versus multi-bolt thing. Right. So it's already not as good as a gun right there. And then on top of it, after all those limitations, it also cost me half an edge just to be able to do it.
Right. I mean, you could shoot 3 bolts as 3 actions, but then you're taking penalties and you get more power points, and you've got those limitations to it as well that you don't have.
On Mac 10, I can do 9 shots with the same number of actions.
Right, exactly. I was going to say you don't have the same limitations you have with shooting.
Yeah.
Well, but then what about okay, so if power points are the governor or the limiter on that to bring balance to it a little bit, then I can spend bennies for extra power points, right?
Yeah.
But
I think you can spend bennies to get power points back. I don't think you can't go above your max.
I think that's what, yeah.
Okay.
You can recoup, but you can't
right.
That was again, when we talked about Resurrection having like a 30 power point cost. If my character only has 10, I can't spend 4 bennies to buy the other 20 power points to cast that power. That's not how that works.
Right. You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to be a much higher ranked, spellcaster before you're ever going to get that resurrection.
Yeah.
I mean, what is resurrection? I didn't look. What is
30 power points?
But what's it?
It's heroic.
Heroic. Okay.
I mean, you're already fairly high by the time you can do it. But I mean, to be fair, most of the arcane backgrounds still start with just 10 power points.
Okay,
right.
so let me ask this question then. How would you can you use arcane backgrounds and powers and support?
What do you mean?
I believe you can actually.
Right. So
I think that's how you do it.
If I've got 3 casters that have resurrection and common bond, and all of them have common bond, can't we all pool our 10 power points and pull that spell off?
No,
I don't think that's acting as a support character.
I don't think that. No, because support only gives you a +1 or +2 or.
I understand that.
Narratively, it makes a lot of sense. Mechanically, there's not a doorway to that, and I'm going to preface this with the word "yet," or not preface, but suffix it with the word "yet," because I'm fairly certain that once enough GMs do that, and the folks at PEG see that at the table, one of the companion books that'll drop at some point will see some kind of an edge or something that lets you, channeler. And now I can accept support from others that give me additional power points or something. I can fully see that becoming part of the rule set, but it's not there yet.
Sure.
Well, mechanically, I would still have to spend the 30 power points and all the negatives to do the support casting anyway, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that makes it untenable. Yeah. All right, cool. Just thought exercise.
Yeah. Well, it's cool though. What we talked about earlier, right?
That hurt.
Ritual that makes the most sense to have that. All those participants do it.
Right, like it's a dramatic task.
That would be great. Because then you got like Conan, right? Where the wizard's casting the resurrection spell, and then you got to have the party fight off the spirits, or the ghosts, or an invading army. Or that's a totally cool use of that power.
Yeah, laying over his body to keep it down, snake down.
Right? I mean, legit. But we know that'll never happen. That would actually take fucking a level of fucking creativity. Then argument.
I mean, let's talk about that for a second. I think that the version of the power system we got in Suede lends itself more to that level of creativity that we all kind of already see as maybe lacking with the people we're playing with.
Sure.
I mean, the idea now that, even more of the mechanical effect has been separated from the trappings. So now you've got, I can spend an extra power point to add this or that effect. The power modifiers and whatnot can now go in there that are completely devoid of what the trapping does. So now you've freed people up to be even more free creatively, which would be great for those who are creative, but it's going to be mind-bogglingly hair-ripping out frustration for all the GMs who've got the guy at their table who says, I cast Bolt.
Well, Tim, that's what I was asking Chris last week, too, because all these modifiers.
Which Bolt is one of the best ones for modifiers.
No, it's perfect, right? But that's what I was asking Chris, if it's slowing down the game, because ultimately, anytime you add math like that, you're going to have the wrench monkeys, right? Who are going to have pre-calculated what the best outcomes are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be some min-maxing and some number crunching in that. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's obviously going to happen, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the guy who min-maxes the fuck out of the game. You know what? If that's what where you find your fun in the game, rock out. You know, I've watched Jared do it with melee characters ad nauseum, where his novice character starts with a D12 fighting and a D12 strength, and he just cudgel whoops everyone he comes across. But at the same time, he's dumb as a box of rocks, and he's got his character making notice rolls to hear the rest of the party crying for help. So I mean, if that's where you find your fun in the game, there's nothing wrong with that. At the same time, though, like, this power system is fully written so that you can go, I cast Magnora's magical flaming fist of bees, and then I throw all those power modifiers in it that makes it an interesting, horrible, penetrating round that goes off at them because of Scott, you motherfucker.
Wow, that got oddly sexual.
How do you cast
fisting? You got fisting
components.
Yeah, you got fisting in there. Wow.
But this is why we'll never be a monetized podcast. But anyway,
demonetized.
But anyway, like, you could do some really fucking interesting shit with these powers and come up with all kinds of trappings off the wall that do even more interesting stuff. But if you don't think that way, you're going to have a table full of I cast Bolt, I cast Blast. And they're going to literally take those little cutout paper cards that we got in PDF form and that we're going to get here in a few months, in the box sets, and they're going to throw it on the table, and that's going to be all they're going to do. There's going to be no imagination there. It's just going to be mechanically throwing a card down on the table for the new fucking Powers board game.
Oh my God, they wrote fucking Savage Worlds 4th edition D&D. Holy shit.
Hey, no, they didn't, because Adventure Edition is backwards compatible.
Well played.
Motherfuckers.
You just said. And then thinking about it, all the cards that are in the thing, I got more fucking tokens and card ideas in the goddamn book than they had before.
Mm-hmm.
I got tokens falling on my asshole like a gumball machine every time we try to do something in the game. Jesus.
I think after, like,
where do you put the penny?
In my prison wallet.
Oh, okay.
Google that.
Never gonna get monetized.
Yeah, just Google it.
I'm gonna give him to Greece.
You gonna eat that cornbread?
Wow! We were talking about magic for a second,
setting,
huh?
right? We created a brand new setting.
We did.
Savage Oz.
That was a good movie, man.
Yeah.
Savage Oz.
I mean, like,
knowledge, Pruno.
I want to be the narrator, the dude in the wheelchair.
Jesus Christ.
Wow, it's really got off the rails. So yeah, Chris, so we're talking about powers.
Magic and stuff.
Yeah, magic and shit. So let's talk about some of the new powers in Suede that don't exist in previous editions of Savage Worlds necessarily.
Sure, let me pretend like I know what you're talking about.
So, I mean, are we talking about, like, the new mind reading, mind wipe, illusion, or are you talking about some of the stuff like, the replacement of quickness with speed and sloth?
Right, and some of the lightness and darkness power kind of already existed, but the sound,
there's now the silence,
mm-hmm.
guys, I don't know, but Barrier seems cool. I don't know if anybody has checked it out, but Barrier has a modifier that lets you, well, number one, you have your standard modifiers, Peg, Pentacle. Thank you. I love the modifiers and the limitations. That is great. I'm going to use them a lot. I say that because we just rag on everything because we're old, angry men, but I do love the stuff you put in there, so thank you.
It's a good game. I just like fucking with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's we just hate life in general. I mean, it's nothing personal, guys. But you can actually with Barrier, there's something called Shaped Barrier.
Oh my god!
And I was talking with like the people in the green room. I'm gonna create a psychic mime using Barrier and telekinesis, so that I can pull people with an imaginary rope and then trap them in a box.
Well, it's like one of the modifiers for Barrier now is
like
damage, right? So it can cause damage. So
yeah,
I think it's interesting that there's no longer a damage field.
Right, yeah.
Power in Suede. It's now kind of shifted over to a modifier.
No, there's a damage field.
There is a damage field.
Wait,
The damage field didn't go away, but
I didn't. Oh, there it is. I apologize. I didn't see it in the index.
It's just it's much weaker than it used to be. Damage field used to be a murder machine.
Yep.
Because you could run up on somebody and you could grapple them with damage field, and it's just they're going to take damage nonstop for that.
especially with the new rules with all the statuses where you can be distracted and vulnerable and all that from grapple as well. Like that would have just been a nasty combination.
They made it now to where if you add the modifier of +2, then you can bring it up to 2d6, but it starts out at 2d4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Chris, Mind Link is from Deadlands, isn't it?
There was a mind there. We actually just had that discussion this past Sunday. I have a shaman who it was called Mind Rider.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And we were looking at it, and she actually, because I said you could, I'm kind of letting them, tweak spells a little bit, or if they want to take something. And so she decided she wanted Mind Link instead of Mind Rider because she kind of felt like that's how she's been using it. And, so I was okay with that.
I one of the things I also want to highlight too is the new status effects for bound and vulnerable being crafted and woven directly into the entangle power.
Yeah.
Which I think is a nice addition to just making it a straight entanglement.
Yeah, I mean, entangle is essentially a arcane grapple.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool. Yeah, that those conditions, if you will, are actually pretty interesting in the system, man. There's a lot of potential there, especially with how you can now flip powers and add those power modifiers. There's a lot of cool shit you could do, and with trappings on top of it.
If you guys take the empathy power, you've got your Jedi mind trick right there, because you get a +1 or a +2 with a raise, and you also have like empathy with riding animals and such, because all it is it's just reading the surface of who they are and just sort of like tricking them with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you combine that with another edge or whatever, and yeah, you start stacking them bonuses.
Oh yeah.
Let's see if there's.
So let me ask you this. I have been having people try to like. All I can think of is the D&D like earth to mud or whatever that spell is, where they can take the earth and turn it into mud. Is there a power that you think does that? Because I'm looking at elemental manipulation, and earth, it just says basically you can move a square foot of earth, half of that in stone each round, and covers tracks. But there's nothing really that I've seen, and I haven't really read through them, that would allow you to do something to that effect, where you're turning like the ground into mud, so that you're stopping someone's movement or hindering their movement. And I'm just wondering if what's there to do that now.
And that's where it gets a little more interesting in the creative side. Is like, if the guy wants to do earth to mud so that the enemy sinks into the mud and can't move, that's the entangle power.
Yeah.
If he wants to do earth to mud so that, you know, they clear out the tracks behind them. You know, he wants to take the mud and harden it so that you can't, the tracker that's following them can't do that. Maybe that's the illusion power. Like, you could very easily find your way into trapping a lot of other powers to do what that one thing in D&D used to do.
I like it. I hadn't even thought about making it entangle.
You know, there works as well, right?
One-to-one. So what you end up doing is you have a lot of things that can all do portions of that, because here the powers just care about what they do mechanically.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That helps out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Savage Worlds proves itself to be a superior system. I mean, next to Genesis, of course. I mean, just that helps.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm sure Jamie's watching. But so here's a question on following on Chris's then. Do you think that oh man, I had a complete fucking mind blank on what I was about to ask about fucking
mind wipe.
Dude, yeah, I completely lost fucking track concentrating on fucking with Jamie. God, man, I'll get back to it. Go ahead. Think it was about magic.
Just let your mind immerse itself in the podcast.
I know. I can't believe you cast mind wipe on yourself.
That's a
veteran power.
It was crazy because it was a really fucking interesting thing, and it just fucking went right out of my fucking mind.
You have fast cast and edit are your modifiers. Instead of wiping a memory, you can edit the memory that you're going in there. You
That's
can
baller, right?
That is insanely powerful, because you can literally, you can have other people, you can commit a crime and have the witnesses remember it as someone else doing the crime.
Right. Or you could trap it as the Men in Black neuralizer, right? It's an arcane,
I'd go
science arcane device. Boop.
You can go weird science, and then you can just say, oh, it was just swamp gas reflecting off of Venus.
So, and not to give away what could be a great product down the road.
Watch it.
How long is it going to take people to look at the power stunt ability from the Superpowers Companion and go, well, I took elemental manipulation, but I want to spend an extra power point and entangle my foe with it and use the entangle mechanics from the entangle power through my elemental manipulation power by spending the extra power points. Like, how long is it going to take for us to see some GM or some setting that comes out from a licensee have some version of the power stunt rule from the Superpowers Companion that lets us start handling things like what Chris just brought up, which is the whole, transmute mud to earth. I want to turn that, pile of stone into mud that runs over his feet and then re-solidifies into stone, but I only have elemental manipulation.
Wow, that's pretty deep, actually, because if you think about it, if you just took that as a general rule, you really don't even need individual powers at that point. You could just list outcomes and modifiers and say go fucking wild.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they would make it to where you'd have to spend a penny in order to do that. Otherwise,
it's just an edge. Or it's
just
an edge that allows you to
have a setting rule that requires a penny. It could be any number of things, but I'm just saying that when you start really looking at how malleable the current version of the power system is, and again, turn this loose on some creative minds, and you're going to see some interesting things suddenly pop out of it.
Sure.
Whereas you hand this to the uncreative, and they're going to go, well, there isn't a transmute mud to earth spell, and I can't do that. So you're just not allowed to do that at all.
Yeah. And what I was doing is just letting her use elemental manipulation and do it. That's kind of what I did.
Yeah.
I just kind of let it go, but I got me thinking, since we were talking about it, if there was something that would allow it. But yeah. So
it's like we always say. It's like we always say on the show, right? It's all about the outcome. What's the desired effect, and then find the rule that fits.
Yeah, make it work.
Yeah. So do you think that the power modifiers, how they are, spliced away from trappings, now you've got those two ways of really focusing on shit. And this is an odd question, but do you think this will help alleviate or add to, all Savage Worlds characters are the same? Like, all Savage Worlds arcane users are the same.
it's really defined by how creative you're willing to be, man. Like, for example, like trappings are more narrative and modifiers are more mechanical. And I think that's if I'm looking at it that way, it's like they were saying, okay, we have people with a right brain and a left brain, and the mechanical people see everything in mechanics no matter how much we try to explain it. And the narrative people see everything in narratives. Why don't we just sort of merge them and stir them up, you know, like let's scramble this egg, but then unscramble it.
Yeah.
So that's why you have the wizard edge, because there's going to be points where you're fighting the abominable snowman and an ice gun is not going to help. But then at the same time, you're going to have to explain, well, he's got heavy armor. You're going to need a heavy weapon to actually hurt him.
Well, so here's the thing too. I think that definition of trappings, Dustin, is the outmoded deluxe version of trappings. Yeah. If you look at trappings, the way it's defined now in Suede, they're actually mechanical effects. They're situational modifiers. They're no longer broad descriptions.
So I wouldn't go that far. I would say trappings now are all but purely narrative. The only effect you have from a trapping is things like the guy who says he has a fireball actually has the ability to set people on fire with it.
Yeah.
That's the only effect trappings can have. All the modifiers, all the mechanical things that the power can do, all now come from these power modifiers.
Well, yeah, hold on a second. But the trapping section, when you read it, it specifically calls out like fire against an ice power, causing +4 damage to an ice troll hit with a firebolt.
I'm not reading that. I'm on page 154, and it says
page 150.
150, heading that way.
Yeah, as far as I know, and I'll have
to
verify, is that that's if you choose to let it do that through the synergy rule.
No, that's not.
No, it's separate from synergy. That's completely separate from synergy. It's saying that trappings matter when they matter, and when they matter, they have a mechanical effect.
And it's very specific in its English verbiage. It says trappings do matter with an emphasis in italics.
Guys, I think we found something here, because it says that in page 150, but if you go to page 154, it says that trappings are just narratively descriptive.
Well, the first paragraph on 150 actually states that trappings are usually just narrative as well. Trappings allow core powers presented to have many different appearances. They usually have no in-game effect of their own, but are important for atmosphere or theme.
Okay, but this is specifically calling out, like, this is a creature that has weakness fire. Therefore, your trapping adds to it. Which is what I was saying a moment ago, that you know, if you're saying that my character throws fireballs, the only time that matters is when something interacts with fire.
Right, it would be flammable, right?
5 points of extra damage because I throw fire. It's that you take 5 extra points of damage from fire. Therefore, when I hit you with my fireball, it does 5 extra points of damage. But when Scott hits you with a fist of bees, it doesn't do 5 extra points of damage because you don't have weakness bees.
Okay, that's fair.
I think that, yeah, like, it's narrative, and it just sort of makes sense in that narrative aspect. But you know, I believe you're right. It's like it doesn't matter until it does.
Right.
I'm still gonna take the wizard edge, man. Like, I'm still gonna take it just because it's gonna be one of those. We are going to have one of those things where we need it.
Well, and again, I think there's just an aspect of the mechanics have been separated from the narrative enough now that I think you're going to have analysis paralysis at the table of, well, what modifier do I want to use?
Yeah.
And you're going to have the typical dearth of lack of creativity that's going to have your players just taking bolt, just taking blast, and not being able to figure out that, hey, with the elements of manipulation, I could soften the ground and have the guy sink into it.
Yeah, and that's too bad, because there's a lot there. If people just spend a little bit of time, you know, and think about I hate saying this, but think outside the box.
Well, Art in the chat has a good example of this, right? He said he had a player who was playing a caster, and person was bitching because they had to get unique names for their spells, and add trappings. And so he went and found, I think it's Richard Woolcock's Vancy and Maddie, like how to D&D Savage Worlds, and the dude wanted to use that shit.
Yeah.
And it's just fucking weak sauce.
I think a lot of that comes from, there's a certain, if you're coming from, we've said this before too, you kind of almost have to drink the Savage Worlds Kool-Aid.
Yes.
To get it. But once you get it, you get it. And it's like, oh my God, this is so much easier. Why is it making this so complicated?
Yeah,
There's a certain warm, comfortable blanket security to being told exactly what a thing does and nothing else.
Well, yeah, because there's, we've had this conversation before over the years, right? And then there's always those people who are like, well, I need Pathfinder because Pathfinder tells me exactly what happens. And what they really mean is Pathfinder tells me exactly what the DM can do and not do to my character. And there's no way around it, no wiggle room. You have no rule zero. The spells are very specific. The actions are very specific. And there's a whole article on 4th edition and why they went that route for that very specific reason, right? Because it was too much that they thought. But yeah, man. So I tell everyone, if you're new to Savage Worlds or you're a long-time Savage Worlder and you got new players, find the YouTube video. And if you can't find it, get a hold of me somehow. I will send it to you of Dragon Age. They took the Dragon Age fucking trailer and put it all in Savage Worlds terms, and it is eye-opening when you see, oh, they're using this edge, this power, that power, and here's how it is all playing out, and that is eye-opening for someone.
If you want, not to pimp our own channel, but there is another version of that I've created similar to Dragon Edge, talking about combat in a martial arts setting using into the what wastelands? Badlands, yeah.
Oh shit, I didn't know that, dude.
That opening fight and into the Badlands where he gets off the motorcycle and whoops like the 10 guys. Jared took that and like cut it apart and said what edges were used in each moment for first strike versus martial artist and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a simple smarts trick. It's not a fighting or combat roll, it's a smarts trick or agility trick.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah.
In regard to that, since there are other assholes that do other podcasts.
Oh fuck!
I will say that Thing 1 and Thing 2 had a great discussion with Eric Lamoureux over on the other podcast, where they talked about specifically this idea of how you would do certain characters. And apparently they did a whole character creation thing where they made John Wick, and then they got an email in from a fan who goes, "Look, you guys just don't know Savage Worlds." And it wasn't that they didn't know Savage Worlds. He just hit them with trappings on things they didn't consider. He hit them with another creative bent on it. And it wasn't that, here's the thing. Those guys know Savage Worlds. They really actually do. Yeah. Harrison's got a couple published adventures. Gary probably owns every product that's ever been released by PEG or a licensee. I mean, they know their Savage Worlds. But at the same time, this is exactly what we're talking about. That lack of creativity, or even just having a creative mind from a different point of view. They described John Wick a certain way, and this fan described it, well, that's just feint, or that's just this. It's a simple smarts trick that he uses so that he can push the guy further away so he can pull the gun up between them and shoot him. Whereas, they tried to explain as like these gun fu maneuvers both work. And that's the interesting thing here. And that's the thing that once you get Savage Worlds and you realize, oh, I really can do that with either of these powers, with either of these edges, by wrapping a different narrative wrapper around it, you stop thinking of those constrictions. You start thinking of, well, which one of these mechanics fits what I'm trying to do at the table better in the moment? And then try to find a way to make that mechanic match the narrative, not the other way around.
Right. So like an example of that, at one point in time, we were playing in a kind of a Jason Bourne Identity-esque type adventure. And the characters washed up on a rocky shore in Russia, and were basically beset by wolves. So Dave's character narrates, "Oh, I'll grab it by the tail and do the hammer throw with it." So brief pause.
You never tried a survival situation?
Yeah,
the wolf will eat your face.
Yeah,
but my character.
Brief pause, and like, okay, it's a push. the end result is you're throwing it's not a throwing roll, it's not a complicated martial arts maneuver.
Yeah.
It's the easiest mechanic to apply is a push.
Yeah.
So go ahead and give me opposed strength rolls.
That's kind of the secret of Savage Worlds, right? I mean, we're way off fucking the magic topic.
Well,
it
kind of fits in.
It is, right? That simplicity of Savage Worlds where, like, yeah, you could really go into this myopic dial of like, okay, cool, where we need all these rules and edges and shit, these bonuses and some penalties. I mean, even PEG recognized it and they addressed that and like, fuck all these bonuses, right? But when the power is even, yeah, you could be like, or you could just say, okay, cool story, bro. Yeah, you're gonna use elemental manipulation to do transmute fucking stone to mud, and you can do a foot at a time until you sink through the next level of the dungeon. Who cares? Voila.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, to bring it back to Magic as well, like look at what they did with like the speed and quickness power. Now it's one power.
Yep.
They removed both, and now you have this sloth speed combination that through the power modifiers, by spending a couple extra power points here or there, you get the same effect you would have gotten from the old power. Well, I guess I shouldn't say the same effect, as in you don't get a whole extra turn from quickness anymore. You now get to reduce your multi-action penalty. But you still have that same ability to increase the celerity of your character, all with the same power that also lets you increase your foot speed or lets you decrease their foot speed.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
And it's interchangeable, right? It's up to the caster about how you go about using that power. So I mean, right then and there's a codified into the actual power itself is the concept and the option of, hey, it's mutable.
Right.
You don't have to have one slow power and then one speed power. It's the same general effect on either side of that spectrum. Go for it. It's all one power.
If you were to take gifted sloth speed, put a limitation, no sloth, to reduce the points and add the modifier, you could make a speedster character. You could go with the multi-action penalty and increase your pace. So that would be the way to make a speedster.
Well, there's so much you can do, and I like how they're combining powers. Honestly, I would have preferred if they had combined blast, bolt, and burst, because it all does the same damage, and just you choose what you need. I need a bolt right now. I need a fucking hand grenade right now. I need a fucking cone spray right now. I'll throw the modifiers in. I'll pay the power point cost to adjudicate these distances and ranges. I mean, it would have been a much simpler power.
They could have taken. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like you could have taken bolt
from attack range and attack melee right out of the superpowers companion. Lift them up. the tweaks necessary to bring the power level back in line with core, and drop those two things in to replace bolt, blast, burst, and smite all in one swipe.
Yeah,
guys. Agents of Oblivion had power modifiers before, and one of the ones that they had was the ability to change the shape. So we could have gone with bolt, and a modifier could have been to change the shape, and it could have been bolt, blast, and burst just under the bolt heading.
Yeah, I mean, call it strike, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're done. You got a strike power. You choose how. I mean, okay, granted, one's seasoned and the other two are novice, but who cares? Because a lot of people I've noticed they're playing with the setting rule. Born Hero. Yeah, that's almost like fucking default now.
Right.
I was actually surprised that it didn't follow with Joker's Wild. I've said for years that Born Hero was a standard in all of my games.
Speak on it. Put truth to words, goddammit.
Yeah, Chris, say it out loud.
Yeah.
I said no, not in my games.
What's up?
You're not born a hero.
Oh yeah, okay, that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think that's way too much to start off with.
If it's the right game, maybe if it's a pulp game or something, but
fucking stuff.
But no, I would not do it.
So I just want to point out, when I was doing that for the longest time, I did not allow you to take higher tier powers. The way I read Born a Hero was you could take edges that you didn't meet the rank requirement for. And it was Clint who actually was like, no, that's just the same. You just ignore the rank requirement when they take the power. And I'm like, are you fucking shit?
Well, because technically you buy the Edge new power, and voila, you're essentially ignoring that. So, actually.
So let's talk about limitation for a second, because we touched on it briefly last episode. Did we mention that it's permanent?
I don't believe we did. Yeah, limitation. So, yeah,
let's specify that for anybody who, because I didn't realize it until we were actually looking at the core books as far as taking a look at this podcast. But yeah, limitation, it's a permanent. It can only be changed with an advance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hindrance to your casting, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of cool, actually, because it makes sense if you're like, oh, okay, well, I've very specifically drilled down to something for narrative and maybe mechanical in the game. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, how many people are going to use it? I don't know.
And see, and I think that's where you start getting into the rub is how many people are going to use limitation outside of obviously like the Aces community. I'm fairly certain we're going to see, a ton of stuff come out from the licensees in settings where here's something with a built-in limitation. And you see that, very clear in it. But how many people are going to do it at their table? I don't know.
Guys, look at Resurrection. You could do what? Range, touch, aspect, human only, duration, less than 24 hours dead. I mean, I've already got 3 power points coming off of that spell.
What's already only range?
Or a power. Well, yeah, okay.
You could potentially make, like Lycanthropy could be shape change. Limitation aspect can only turn into wolf-like creatures.
Now, I will say this. I'm prepping a Savage Worlds game for hopefully next Sunday, and fucking hopefully people show up and put down their fucking D20 dicks and learn something else. But it's Alice in Not So Wonderland. So it's called To Save the Mad Hatter, and it's Alice, the Cheshire Cat, the Mad Hatter, and the Rabbit all taking on the Red Queen as essentially like they're all arcane background gifted. Right, and so I use limitation for Alice's eat me, drink me powers, right? So that's where she goes with it. And the Cheshire Cat, the same thing. I limited his intangibility and his invisibility powers. And I went, and I'll pimp out that. What is, fuck my life. Savage.us, that online character generator. That fucking thing is amazing. Holy shit, that thing is handy for if you're learning Suede. It's pretty cool. Because it baby walks you and gives you alerts and shit. But yeah, I use all the limitations. And so I guess, man, I do sound like a dick. I actually do use limitations, and it was pretty cool. It gave me the effect that I wanted.
Yeah, I think Dave's hit on a good point. I don't think the general public picking up the core rulebooks is going to take it to the level that the licensee is going to and really apply those rules to make them unique. Or
I'm going to throw this out there. Talking about limitations. What about limitation? I take right away that the limitation is I only have one trapping.
Yeah.
Every power I take has to have.
Oh, so you're the fire mage.
Yeah, you are the fire mage. Everything you do is fire.
That's kind of cool. I would allow that.
Spell is the freaking dual stripes from Back to the Future. You're whatever it is, like everything has a fire trapping. Would you guys consider that an aspect limitation, or is that bending the rules too much?
I don't think so. I mean, it just what the impact is what? One less power point to activate the power?
Yeah. You can't take Wizard Edge. Like you couldn't take the Wizard Edge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so Dustin, hold on a second.
Wizard Edge.
Dustin, you're in love with the Wizard Edge.
I am.
You brought it up multiple times. Explain why.
All right, the Wizard Edge is different from how it was in Savage Worlds Deluxe. In Savage Worlds Deluxe, how it functioned now is called channeling or concentration. Yeah, I think. What it does is you can spend extra power points to change the trapping. So that means if you are shooting fire, You can spend points to shoot ice instead, or you can do wind blasts. So if you're going to face an elemental, you will need that edge. Or say if you wanted to play Star-Lord from the comics and use his elemental gun, you would need weird science and you would need the wizard edge in order to change through the different elements.
That's cool as fuck, man.
Yeah.
So what in your mind makes that so powerful and so attractive and so awesome?
Because you can shift through the weaknesses of the monster. Like, let's say you face an elemental and you don't, and nobody has. You face a fire elemental, and the only way to really beat them is with water. Wizard Edge, you can actually hit them with water. Or if you face a bunch of like ticks or whatever, you can change the type of trapping to actually affect their weakness. If you don't have that edge and you don't have the trapping that affects their weakness, what do you do?
Well, you beat him with a stick. I mean, but to backtrack here for a second, I just want to point out, if I took a limitation that says I only have one trapping, and then I took the Wizard Edge, I could still pay the extra power point to change that trapping. It just means all my powers started with the same fire trapping, and then the Wizard Edge lets me pay extra to change it.
I think you've undone like the limitation at that point, though.
Well, essentially you have, right? But only if you need to. You put the power back to square one. But I think Dave is saying, like, look, I'm going to be the fucking lightning mage, and all I do is lightning things, or I'm the penetrator. Then yeah,
you go the lightning mage route. Let's say everything's electricity based, and then we run into the creature that's immune to electricity, and with Wizard Edge, I pay extra in the oh shit moment to change my lightning bolt into something else.
It's a good thing my old master was a nice mage.
Yeah.
Surprise, I'm really not left-handed.
Right?
Oh, the stranger.
Bingo.
Look at him. He's giggling his ass off.
All right.
So we're coming up on the end of the hour. Do we have anything else in chat we want to talk about? Anything power-wise that anybody's bolstering about or asking questions about?
No, tonight's been limited on questions. Just more just conversation.
Chat comments.
Conversations. We've got a D&D convert in the chat who's a friend of mine who's dipping his toes in Savage Worlds very slowly. And
this is the wrong episode.
Oh, just jump in the deep end, baby. Jump in the deep end.
Yeah, I don't think he really knew what he was in for when he tuned into this.
All right, so then I want to set aside the last few minutes for Dustin to make a special announcement.
Oh shit.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the blast has gone out on our Twitter feed, on Mayway, and in our Facebook group. Atomic Ninja now has a merchandise store. That means that if you go to teespring.com/stores/Atomic Ninja Studios, you can pick up Dead End shirts, Dead End hoodies, or you can pick up a coffee mug. You can pick up Atomic Ninja pillows. You can pick up Atomic Ninja merchandise and show people why we're never going to get monetized.
Boom. Love it.
All right. Yeah, well, that's a specialty item store.
I don't want to mention it on the air.
So on that note, until next time, this is Jared Savage, Daddy Gunning for Scott, Dustin, Dave, and Chris saying keep rolling and stay savage.